Right, hello, welcome to Sisyphus Complex Solution. This is episode 191 and basically called The Truth. I would have made it a bit of a longer title than that, but I think the title page kind of gives the indication as to what it's about. So I'm covering two offices this week, and then after I've done those two offices, and there's a reason why I'm sticking at two offices and that are related to the audit of the MOD, but again, I'll explain at the back end. But then before I finish and after I've completed the two offices, I'm going to make a bit of a comment about the Epstein situation and then another update about the DVLA. So, on with the process, I guess. Right. So this week starts with the Service Prosecuting Authority, and this is yet another one of these offices with no reports and no finances. The basic is that this is the court that deals with offences within the military. Now, I have to make a basic comment in support of my sort of continued promotion of areas of route to recourse, because I do have to bring attention to the fact that this particular office, along with pretty much every other public office, is subject to the Nolan Principles, which is the 7 principles in public office. So like I say, this is something that applies to all public and civil servants. And this is something that it continuously gets my goat with people that seem to be denying the fact that when it comes down to Parliament and the MPs, that lays in the hands of this Daniel Greenberg fella, who is the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards, who, despite this clear and stated objective and not really objective obligation of everybody in public office, seems to think that it doesn't apply when it comes to MPs, and it's why he does need to be removed from office. I'll put a link in the description to it again, but I mean the most pertinent explanation that you can get for all of this, because I do seem to be the only person that actually keeps repeating this fact. And so there's a link in the description to a video that I made on the Moirai Appropriation channel called Code of Conduct. And so, like I say, this is too many people with public voices, including barristers, that just don't understand this. And because I do actually have the evidence for what I'm talking about, people need to start paying more attention. There's nothing that I'm saying here which is incorrect. Anyway, and including people like Rupert Darwall, who this week decided to call it all bureaucratic blah blah. Moron. Yet more people. I can write a book, but I literally don't do anything to help anyone. Can't be bothered with it. So anyway, back to the process side of things. I mean, the clarification of this Nolan Principles is included in the documents for this particular prosecuting authority, and it's a document called the Protocol Between the Law Officers and the Service Protecting Authority. So, again, official document. It's on the you can see it on the screen. This is a real thing. Unfortunately, this office gets support from the Attorney General, who is, because of his role as even though he's not an elected individual, he's basically been placed as the head of a ministry. That is pretty much going to also then mean that he's also not going to be subject to these very same principles. So that in and of itself is a problem. So what I'm talking about here is the Attorney General being this Lord Hermer fella, who has been caught up in quite a few different scandals of late. And he's also involved in, as I mentioned last week, and that there's this issue around how Starmer and this Hermer have been involved in prosecuting our boys in the military. So it doesn't really go hand in hand to have a service prosecuting authority working in conjunction with the very people that want to prosecute the boys. It's absolutely retarded. So a key point is that the office came about in 2006 as a result of the Armed Forces Act of the same year. Right, so yeah, there's the Attorney General's office note. For some reason I didn't have it noted down as a click. Anyway, doesn't matter. Right, so this is the Armed Forces Act. And what you have to understand with that and this relationship with the Attorney General and with Keir Starmer is that their actions to be able to abuse this Armed Forces Act started taking place immediately in 2007. So the Act comes into play, Starmer and Hermer start shenanigans, shall we say, and then our boys start getting prosecuted. So it's as if the law was actually put in place specifically for that purpose. And if you look at the Act itself, it really does beg the question that this has to have been something done with malicious intent, to be perfectly frank, because it shouldn't really be a surprise that this is done during the period under Blair. But when it comes down to the definitions of law and how they're applied and where they're applicable, it's always been, or it always was the case, that you don't really apply the laws of Civvy Street to the military. You just don't do that. You can't really do that. And when you look at this Armed Forces Act of 2006, that's effectively exactly what they did. And that's what laid the ground for the abuses that have taken place in persecuting our boys ever since. Now, as of November last year, we've got yet another woman being put in charge. So this is this is a lot of this is why I decided to look at that the title and that, and the film from A Few Good Men, and how that played out as this court role where she would effectively have been the judge in that instance. That is the position that she holds. But this is not somebody with a military background. I mean, I've got nothing of any great details to suggest that there's any ideological bent or that she's doing anything wrong per se. But I do question why somebody that doesn't have this military background, have no understanding of battleground situations, would seem to think that she can then apply inappropriate laws onto the guys in the military. And like I say, working in conjunction with two people that have done everything that they possibly could to make sure that they go about everything in the way of just being able to find as many different routes to be able to destroy people from this country as they possibly can. They'll look for any little area that they possibly can find to say, oh, how can we prosecute somebody so we can make money out of it? That's all it boils down to, realistically. So it does kind of then suggest that the more pertinent question to this is that if we're looking towards solving problems, then, in solving problems in terms of what should be an improvement, this has been in place for 20 years. And I can't see how this will have resulted in any value whatsoever. Quite the contrary. So as far as I'm concerned, what it replaced has not made the improvements, and so any considerations as to what should actually be taking place needs to go back to the drawing board as to what it was that they did before. So like I say, when you have that example, I mean, I know it's a movie, and nobody should take movies for reality, and certainly don't take actors as having any clue what the hell they're talking about. But it's at least depicting a situation that can't over dramatized, obviously, in that, but it is depicting a situation that historically would have taken place. You had your inner circle military courts. The laws are different. The situations are different. The understandings of the situations are different. This is putting the complete wrong perspective on top of that, and it's a mismatch. I don't agree with this office in the slightest. So then next up, we've got the United Kingdom Reserves Forces Association, which does have some elements of interest despite the blank screen that you can see. Because what you can see is that, once again, I've not got any financials to put up, which is the first thing that I normally have to display. So if we just hold that thought for a minute, because firstly I need to show you that the Gov site itself stipulates that this is a non-registered charity, and it's funded by a mix of public funding and by corporate unit, bit of an unusual description, and individual subscriptions, also an unusual description. So it's a non-registered charity, apparently. Is it? Well, quite unusual then. It actually is registered with the Charity Commission, and basically all of its money comes from the taxpayer. Misinformation. What I can also say is that despite these overview numbers, there are no actual annual reports available to do a slightly more focused audit, and that becomes a problem in terms of compliance with the Charity Commission as well, because even when they're registered with the Charity Commission, practically any charity that you look at under that particular website, when you find the actual entry, you go to the annual reports or the financial reports, they will have a link through to the filed annual reports. Nothing in this instance. I find that very odd. So these are matters that are already a problem. But then we get into what this association is actually all about. Because just by way of fact that it's called an association, you're going to kind of think, well, okay, have you just got the group of the little knitting circle talking about the reserves again? Not quite. I find this one to be something of a disgrace again, because whilst you get the About Us section that gives you the headline guff about education and development and blah blah bullshit, this is literally putting the least qualified soldiers at the beck and call of NATO. There's another word for that, and it's called mercenaries. And they would literally be at the beck and call of effectively the EU retards, because it's not as if the US is going to need them, is it? Considering there are known international experiences in the likes of Ukraine, with no admission of deployment via the actual military. Is this then coming from the reserves? There's questions around this. Because also pay attention to the fact that at the bottom of their so-called priorities, they state that they keep the three services aware of activities, so then not under their direct instruction. This is absolutely not acceptable. Absolutely not. Precisely because these are basically, I mean, they're part-time soldiers. And NATO itself is already run by a failed politician with no clue whatsoever as to how you fight anything or anyone. This should never leave the accountability of our services. The fact that this is stated as an association and their dodgy reporting, this is it's kind of manipulation to the public, this kind of description. Because like I say, under any definition, this is using our reserves as mercenaries under the name of NATO. This I don't like. And again, because I've noticed that there's a very big uptick in the propaganda to try to get our lads interested in the military. Apparently they've put out the latest bloody reality TV bullshit program on, is it on ITV or something like that? I don't watch any of these TV channels myself. I've seen it advertised on X. And I'm also seeing lots of different posts being put up by the various areas of the services and the spin-offs from that, trying to promote entrance to the military, including the reserves. All boys around the country need to understand the kind of position that you might be being put into when you're in the reserves. You might end up being at the beck and call of unelected, unqualified, know-nothing retards that will send you into situations where they then have their plausible deniability. We know that there's a bunch of our guys out in the Ukraine, and we know that they're not these ones that were told, oh, it's okay if you volunteer to go out there. No, they've been literally placed out there. Does that include the reserves? There's a question. But not having this in the hands of our senior military accountability system is just, this is a wrong one. This really is a wrong one. So, there's some truth for you. Right, at this point in that, I'm going to finish up with the sort of the standard process stage. So, in terms of the financials of the overview of the MOD so far, which you can definitely not read anymore, there's no change to the total because both offices had no numbers for the benchmark period. Obviously that Reserves Association have some figures for afterwards, but I'm not going to help them out in that by guessing a number here. And, you know, I mean, if they want to fail to report, that's their problem, not mine. But obviously I will include it when I show at the end what that full 5-year period looks like. So, policy side of things. Obviously in terms of that services prosecuting authority, I would completely abolish this because that is supposed to be a military court, not a civvy street court. In doing this, that also then means that I would repeal the Armed Forces Act. It has no place in the military. In terms of this UK Reserve Forces Association is concerned, well, here I've put it in the column that basically says disbanded, defunded, delisted and so forth, because I'd literally just cut them free. I'd cut them free in a way so that they literally are what they claim. So they would certainly not be part of the MOD. They would receive absolutely no taxpayer funds whatsoever. And they would not have any ability to have any instruction to our reservists, whether from this association, NATO, or anybody else. If our reserves don't get instruction directly from our three services, the Army, Air Force, Navy, if there is no direct instruction from that command, they go nowhere. If they want to continue on that basis, then, that's up to them. So long as they all don't have any interference to the operation of the reserves. And I'll also make sure they have no input at all to any level of the military whatsoever. I'd also then make them redundant in the way that they claim that they want to be as well, and that by removing their charitable status. So, yeah, leave them afloat. Find yourself a different useful idiot. We're not doing mercenaries in this country, thanks very much. So that's that one done. So, obviously I have to have some kind of a conversation about the Epstein stuff, because it's really blowing up to a point that it's hard to avoid, really, isn't it? Now, for clarity, no, I have not spent any great amount of time going through 3 million documents, most notably because what I have looked at so far too many of these documents are just newspaper articles of absolutely no interest. Obviously, other people are picking out certain emails, but I've seen far too much junk in there and had to be wasting my time, to be perfectly frank. I'm doing a process that is providing a solution to be able to have something so we're not being led by the bloody nose. So I haven't got time to fuck around with this. The simple fact of the matter is that you could look up practically any name that you want and you will find an entry. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not interested in what other people are determining, but like I say, frankly, I'm too busy in that to be switching over to that particular minefield. But at the same time, it's a kind of an indication as part of the issue that we've got. And the fact that it is being laid out in such a minefield, because when it is laid out in this fashion, you have to ask the question as to why. Because quite patently in that you've got your leftists that are picking out names from the right and saying, oh, look, see, this is all the far right are doing this. And then you've got the right that are picking out the names from the left and doing the reverse to them. Now, I have had a little bit of fun with this because, just as one example, there was an account on Twitter from Canada thinking they were doing some kind of a victory lap by listing all of the standards as, oh, look, this is Trump and it's Musk and it's Banner and blah, blah, blah. And I just wrote in the replies and I just said, yeah, Mark Carney's in the files as well. You can do it for practically anything. And he is in the files as well, by the way. There's, like I said, there's so many examples that you can give when you come across idiots like this. Then you've got the sort of the escapism route, because everybody, again, if you're not going to go for the left and the right, it basically ends up being pretty much the same thing. But you've then got the narrative front where, I'm seeing people literally turning around and recommending to the likes of Starmer to focus on it's the Russians. The Russians have done it. And then on the other side, you've got, no, it's the Israelis that have done it. I mean, quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. And everything that I'm seeing so far does kind of suggest that both are involved. But then so is every other retard government around the world. So, again, it's one of these situations that whatever it is that you want to find, you'll find it. So if we put all of the narrative side of this stuff and that to one side, what we should know by now, after the number of years that we've had to put up with so much bullshit, is that you don't look at the distractions. You just look at what's the result. Because the result of what's going on is going to inform you as to what the actual intention is. Because at the moment, you've got this situation where you've still got everybody's divided on this, that and the other. But at the same time, it doesn't matter which side you look at. When it comes down to positions of so-called authority, elite, or whatever description we want to put on there, everyone's a pederast. Everyone's a criminal. There is no trust in the institutions that are destroying our nations. There is, it is basically true that is the situation, and that doesn't matter what colour shirt you want to put on. It's all, whatever shirt it is, it's all blood-stained. So what we've got to be careful of then is, when everything is being torn apart, what you need to be looking out for is what's the solution that's going to be coming through, what's going to be offered, because that will be the intention. You'll know it when you see it, providing of course you've actually got your eyes open for once. And it could very well be a situation where they're going to turn around and say, well, look, because nothing can be trusted, nobody can be relied upon. This is why you have to be governed by your incorruptible AI system. Why not? For the people that have got more active imaginations, and that it could be Satan himself that comes and stands on a hilltop. I can't remember what the name of the I can't remember what the name of the actual so-called operation was. Is it Blue Book or something? I can't remember. It's not the one with the UFOs and that, but it's the one where they turn around and say that there'll be in each separate nation they'll put an apparition, like some sort of an image. In Christian nations they'll show an image of Christ, and in Muslim nations they'll show Allah, and then out in other parts of Asia they'll show Buddha and all this sort of stuff, and bring it all together so everybody worships under the same fake hallucination, which then ends up being Satan. It looks like some really weird fucking stuff out there, but it is out there. So if that was to be something that came forward, then have your eyes open to understand that you're being played one way or the other. But more than likely, it's just going to be some form of, here's why you need our AI system, one world government type of proposition. As I keep having to repeat though with all of this stuff, is that it doesn't matter what kind of theory it is that you actually believe in. Whatever it is that the online crowd are speaking about next. The only thing that bears understanding in all of this is that the actual solution is just to not be led by the nose. If you're not being led by the nose, then you're not going to be distracted with however it is that this is all playing out. The basics really are things like actual due diligence, scrutinise stuff, actual burden of proof, lessons learned, evidence, accountability, these kinds of terms. Don't worry about what it is that they're saying. Look towards the actual sort of proper benchmark capabilities. Make these terms mean something again. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, if we don't, then they'll just keep hitting you with one insult and distraction and mass palaver after another until you all just give up. In terms of what will specifically happen in the UK, I mean, I have added a link in the description for it's a good 2.5 hour breakdown, which is kind of interesting. Um, and it gives the network under Labour and the links to the Jews, which is quite possibly why. I mean, the link that I've given and it's for Rumble. I think the YouTube version seems to have suddenly disappeared. Uh, but this is an explanation by a young guy called Connor Tomlinson. Now, he's not turning, it isn't actually him turning around and going, it's the Jews. It's a particular network which just happens to have quite a Jewish theme running through it. But obviously, again, this would not represent the entirety of the problem, because it's not just people that are involved in Labour that are a part of this freakery. But in terms of the immediate government and the people that are causing us the biggest problems at the moment, he does do a good job of covering their side of this equation. And like I say, though, I mean, it's not a single party problem, and despite Connor's belief that Starmer's days are numbered, I'm still not completely convinced of that. I say this isn't a Liz Truss situation at all, and quite frankly, she was pitifully weak. Whereas this time you're looking at people that are, I mean, ideological to the point that just throwing people to the wolves is of no consequence to them. They don't care. They'll just lie their way through everything. They are the epitome of the Fabian kind of ideology, where it's literally just keep breaking eggs, keep breaking eggs, keep breaking eggs. There's never a fucking omelette in front of them, but they just want to keep breaking eggs. These people are at levels that they don't care about anything, which is why they don't have a problem with hiring and protecting pederasts and grooming gangs. That's just the fact of the matter. Am I going to make some prediction on this sort of stuff? I mean, I think I did make a note about this in terms of my predictions for the year. I mean, obviously this is coming quite early on, but there was this unusual situation of Nigel Farage saying something about 2027, where it's like, what do you know, mate? So I'd be a little bit guided by some of the side talk that nobody pays attention to. But yeah, the main thing realistically is, would I like to see every single one of these people hung, drawn and quartered? Abso-fucking-lutely. For everything that they've done and that they're doing, yes, absolutely. And I don't care, like I said, I don't care what colour shirt they're wearing. But in terms of being able for that to actually be an eventuality, that's down to us not being led by the nose then, isn't it? Not being taken in by all of the distraction. So that's kind of like where I stand on things at the moment. So moving into the latest with the DVLA situation, which has actually become something a little bit of a wider conversation now. Because what I've got on the screen here is an article that came out on January the 31st in the Telegraph. And this was brought to my attention by an account on X called Rogue. I had a quick look. I think it's something called Rogue and Richie. They're not people I'm familiar with, so I don't really know. But when I noticed this particular post being put up, that was what led me through to the article, because obviously I'm not somebody that sits down and reads the newspapers on a daily basis. It's all usually full of shit. So this particular article, then, that goes some way towards an explanation as to what's going on with these duty rates, and considerably better than the piss poor attempt that the DVLA sent me. And essentially what we're dealing with here, and that is a war on cars, which, to go a little bit further than what the article actually stipulates here, and that it did actually begin with an attack on the taxis, which has had some kind of a lunacy around it that a taxi car is no longer allowed to be any more than 3 years old or something along those lines. I mean, I forget precisely what it was, but there's an account out there called Andy the Gabby Cabby, and he discusses this problem because obviously Cabby is a taxi driver, and I think he's based out in Margate. He's got quite a big account on YouTube, so you can find it quite easily. I'll let him explain that side of things if you're interested. But this new car tax is effectively attacking pretty much all cars that are 20 years old or less, because the legislation doesn't allow them to go after cars that are older than that, on account of it effectively being subject to landmines having been laid in 2006 legislatively. This is, as the article suggests, this kind of then makes all cars built after 2006 uneconomical for people to be able to maintain, because they're going to get increasingly hit with higher and higher duties. And this basically means you're looking towards huge swathes of vehicles that are going to be taken off the road. And that then basically falls into the this new method of totalitarianism, which is pretending like we're not stopping you from having these cars, but we will bankrupt you if you want to be able to own one, because we don't want you to own anything and be happy. Remember? It's the exact same method that they've been doing for a very long time, irrespective of the side of the uni party. They've been doing it around cigarettes, alcohol, and then with a great deal more impact in the energy sector for years now. It is the worst form of state coercion. Typical sort of socialism and breaking those eggs again. They want you to fall in line with whatever it is that they're dictating, and they want to be able to remove your ability to travel under the ownership of your own transport. They don't want you to be driving. They don't want you to own your own car. They don't want you to be flying. They don't want you to be travelling of any description whatsoever beyond your 15-minute ghetto. That's only for that's the sole preserve of the agenda mongers. Rules for thee, but not for me. That's effectively what we're dealing with here. So in terms of developments on my side, the latest is that they are now threatening to dispose of the vehicle on the 13th. And I've already entered into stage 2 of the complaints. Yes, you heard that correctly. If you thought that the insurance sector had these methods of complaint where it's literally a policy of first stage complaint, refuse them all, and then let's see what we can do to dissuade people from wanting to make a claim. If you want to know where the insurance market got that idea from, just look at governments. It's not unique to insurance by any stretch. It's all intended to wear you down. All intended to say, yeah, if you want to complain, we're gonna drag this out to such an extent that the vast majority of you are going to give up. So, whilst I won't be putting any of the communications I've had since last week's episode on the screen this time, suffice to say I've had to lay some groundwork on all of this, because I know this then doesn't end on the 13th, and it certainly doesn't end at stage 2 either. And the more that they want to drag it out, the more my compensation number keeps climbing along with it. Fine by me. At this point, I'm going to keep my strategy really to myself a little bit, because I want to see how it works out before I'm suggesting something to people that then you might follow and it not have the end result that I want you to get. But suffice to say, at the moment, the kind of morons that I've experienced at the DVLA so far, which it does have to be said, it's always women. Literally every single time I've ever gone through anything like this, it's always bloody women. But the problem that they've got is that I understand the system better than they do. So, like I said, I'm not going to say that what I've laid out at the moment has got absolute guarantees. So that's why I wanted to sort of hold off on that a little bit. But essentially, these people seem to think that their process is solid and that they can lay little traps for you as well. But they're not the only ones that can do that. This is what they don't understand with their follow what the little piece of paper says. I can say that I did have at least one contact today with Margaret that I mentioned last week, and her stage 1 being a useful idiot failure. And she actually tried the cry bully and victim card, because I'd had the situation where I had to make a response that didn't just go to her, but went over to the organisation that's holding the vehicle at the moment, and I called her dumb, because she is. And so apparently, we can't tolerate this kind of stuff. And so I've responded to her to say that I literally don't care. I don't care that she doesn't like being told for the first time in her life, possibly, that she's a fucking idiot. Not my problem. Don't try the cry bully tactics with me, because I ain't gonna fucking wash. What I did point out to her, and therefore through to the DVLA, you don't like being called dumb? I don't like thieves that steal my car and then demand a fucking ransom. So you can save your crying for somebody that gives a shit. So, there's a few little traps that have been laid. There's a little bit more that I can do as well, but I've got time for that. The more they want to fuck me around, the more I'll lay more traps for them. And like I say, the main part in my head is the invoice amount is ticking over. Keep playing games with me. The longer you take, the more I'll get from you. That's fine. So, the bit that I did mention after completing those 2 offices for the normal part of the episode, I just want to inform that in terms of the process as it stands and doing the audit of the MOD, I have actually reached the end of the number of offices that are listed underneath the MOD, and quite plainly the numbers are completely way off in terms of what the total group amount should be. Now, it could be possible for me to call foul at that point, but I'm not going to do that, because it's another one of these situations where, despite them being incompetent in what they list as a group, I can understand better of what the group involves than they clearly can, or what they want to try to pretend it is, because they don't know how to report anything properly. And so I know that it does include some additional offices, and that's what I'm going to start to cover from next week. But then it also obviously includes the 3 main services themselves: the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. That's where the money's actually going to start to make sense. we'll see after doing that if it does actually equate to what it is that they've claimed. Then at least I'll have a realistic picture, rather than turning around and just saying, this is what the group that they said it was. Oh, it's all completely mismatched, it's wrong. No, I'm going to have to anticipate what it actually is, because otherwise I'll just be doing the same thing as they're doing, which is presenting a false picture. So just to let you know, from next week, this is all going to be based off of stuff that is not actually listed underneath the MOD. So, I think that pretty much covers everything that I need to talk about as far as this week's episode is concerned. Yeah, not really anything else to add. Like I say, everything is fucking mental as normal. And there is actually something that I have wanted to mention for a few weeks now, and that's because it's something that I've been doing for about, oh Christ, how long now? 4 or 5 months? Maybe a bit. Fuck it, I'm going to do it now, why not? And this isn't an advertisement, by the way. And I might... No, I don't think I'll need my glasses. Very much off topic, by the way, this is. Because essentially what I've had... It's just a little piece of advice for people. For anybody that's out there. Very random piece of advice. Now, for the longest time, I've had issues with my gums. I've had a whole bunch of health issues and that over the last, well, 7-8 months. I mean, even this week and that I've ended up having to lay down for 2 sodding days because my back gave way. Old fart, what can I tell you? But anyway, I've had these issues with my gums where they started to recede and all that sort of stuff. You know, shit happens when you're getting older. And I was always sort of, I'm dreaded. I mean, I had gone to a dentist a couple of years ago, and I had issues with a couple of me teeth at the front, and it's sort of like, for God's sake, don't let me teeth at my front fall out. And they were going on about having replacing them with falsies, and then putting a bridge over it, and wanted to charge something like about £3,000. And I'm like, fuck off. And I've sort of been giving it consideration for the last couple of years, actually, as to is there actually something that you can do on your own to try to alleviate the problem and possibly even reverse it. So I had spent a bit of time in that, having a look around at this stuff, because I vaguely remembered years ago in that about Jordan Peterson saying that if you have an all meat diet, because he had issues with his gums as well. And he said when he moved to an all-meat diet, his gums actually started to rejuvenate. And I was thinking, well, okay, that sounds great, but you try having an all-meat diet in the UK. You know, this isn't fucking Texas. So I was looking for alternatives. And I did actually come across something, which is basically this. Now, obviously, so I'm sure you can't really see it properly, and that's a good thing, because like I say, it's not an advertisement. And I'm sure there's different brands that do this. But basically what I've got is, it's called coconut pulling oil. Now this particular one and that has got a bit of a mint tint to it as well, and so it's not quite so vulgar tasting. And I'm not going to say it works, but there is a notable difference. Enough of a notable difference for me to now to turn around and mention it. So literally what you do is you get like a tablespoon and put like 3/4 of a tablespoon of this liquid in your mouth and swill it around for 10 minutes. Now it says, I did come across people that were saying you can do this like 2-3 times a day. I thought, I ain't fucking doing that. So I do it first thing in the morning. I do swill it around for 10 minutes, and then immediately after, because you can't swallow this stuff, you have to spit it out. But you're not allowed to spit it out in the sink either. You have to have like a bin or something like that you spit into. But anyway, then you go up and you brush your teeth, and give yourself a little massage around the gums. It is actually working. I've no idea. I can't explain why or how or anything like that, but it is working. It is having a benefit. Now, because some of the problems that I've had, uh, I mean, even when I did go to the dentist, they were going, yeah, this is a bit much, mate. I can't do anything about that. So I'm not saying that it is all reversed and now my gums are all back flourishing or anything like that. So I'm not overplaying this by any stretch. But I will say that especially the two front teeth that I was having the most concern about, they seem to be becoming more solid, more firmly fixed, shall we say, because they were quite wobbly. And the gums have stopped receding. And yeah, you do get a bit of a funny feeling in your mouth. I mean, I dare say that some people might turn around and go, well, it's making me food taste a little bit different or something like that. Quite frankly, I smoke. I don't give a shit. It doesn't matter to me. And then the overlaying fact is, well, do you think your food is tasting a little bit different, but at least you got your fucking teeth? So, swings and roundabouts, bit of a trade-off there, really, isn't it? So, the point is, and like I say, incredibly random and not something I'm used to doing insofar as these episodes is concerned. But when I do come across something that I think is of interest, or has been of interest to me, and something that is actually useful, then I like to pass it on. And so, because I am of an age, and if there are any other people out there of an age, it could be useful to you too. So yeah, it's called coconut pulling oil. You can find it on the internet. I've not seen it in any shops anywhere, so you probably do have to order it online. I think it's, if I remember rightly, it's something like about £8-9 a bottle, which it's a UK, of course, it's fucking expensive. But like I say, do you want your teeth? And certainly better than going out and getting a pair of, I think, what is it they called? I think they call them as a nickname that the Turkish teeth. Those great white things and that where everybody speaks with their lips because they've got their falsies in. I can't be doing with that either. So yeah, just a completely random piece of information there. So on that particular bombshell, I think I'll call it a day. All right, cheers. See you next week. Bye bye.